Hello, welcome. An Australian nurse, Bronnie Bear, has spent several years in palliative care, caring for the patients in the last 12 weeks of their lives. She has revealed the most common regrets of the dying. And guess what the first one is? I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So let's draw this picture together. I mean, the expected life we have to fit in. Since the early childhood, we have this predetermined list in front of us, checklist in front of us we have to follow. And it all starts with you have to. You have to get into the top schools, you have to study very hard. You have to, after the graduation, get into a really good job. You have to earn money. You have to have a car, you have to buy a house. You have to get married, you have to have children. And you are not allowed to give any breaks in between. It's like the coloring books we have when we are children. You know the shapes, there are the shapes, but you are not allowed to color outside the shapes. And the funny thing is, even when you are choosing the colors need to be in line with the reality. You cannot have pink rivers, or you cannot have, let's say, red clouds. But what about the dreams? What about the imagination? And then you are 70 years old, or 8 years old, the life already passed you by, and you have lived a life trying to fulfill other people's expectations, thinking that is the life you preferred. And in your deathbed, you realize. You are asked, what is your biggest regret? And you reply, I wish I had lived a life true to myself. But what if I tell you, it's actually not that very simple to follow your dreams, even the most wildest ones. You just need courage and one simple step. So this begs the question why I'm here. My name is Anıl, I'm 28 years old. I studied International Relations in Ankara University, Faculty of Political Science. After the graduation, I went to London and did my Master's on Globalization and Development. And when I returned back, I started working immediately. I was working with the European Union funded projects. I was among the lucky ones, I have to admit, because I had a really good job. I had a really good career path in front of me. I had a really good relationship. But there was one small problem. I was not feeling happy. I was feeling there is something missing, something incomplete. So I was feeling that there should be more to see, more to experience, more to live, rather than spending your whole life inside the same squares, within the same four walls. But on the other hand, I had this wildest dream. I wanted to travel the world. And let me ask you, in this conference room, how many of you want to travel the world? Almost all. So I was trying to carry out this dream, step by step, one by one, within my approved holidays. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. And in one of my longest journeys, in 2011, I decided to do the Trans-Siberian Express. I decided to cross the whole Russia by train. This is the longest railroad in the whole world. It is 9,289 kilometers from Moscow to Vladivostok. And it was completed in 1904. And when you are crossing the whole rail line, you cross actually 8 different time zones. During this travel, I planned everything. It was supposed to last for 17 days. I was planning to stop in different cities. I met with a guy, a British guy. This is pictures from the tour actually. I met with a guy whose name is Richard. He was a British guy, and he was 33 years old. And he was the first person that I met who was traveling the world. He quit his job, started traveling from Northern America, Central, Southern America, Australia, and afterwards he was in Russia, in Asia. He was traveling for the last 2.5 months. And he didn't know what he's going to do, and he was not feeling anxious about it because he was very happy with the decision he made. He was the first person that I met in the modern era who left the predetermined life path aside and started traveling. He left everything behind. So I realized at that moment, actually, traveling the world is not that very difficult if you put your mind into it. Then I returned back to Turkey. I was feeling extremely motivated. And in 2012, after some serious thoughts and endless discussions with myself, I decided to quit my job. And I bought a one-way ticket to India, New Delhi. And in December 2012, I gave my resignation, and the whole journey started for me. At this point, I want to ask if I could do it as a Turkish woman in her mid-20s, who grew up in a relatively conservative and closed society, surrounded with people who think that they know better what I want better than me. If I can do it, why can't you? Why won't you? You will probably come up with reasons like money, security, language barriers, visas, anxiety about future, and leaving family and friends behind. But I'm repeating again, as a Turkish girl in her 20s, as a 26-year-old Turkish girl, if I can do it, why won't you? Let's say money, the biggest obstacle you will come up with, but I will tell two things about it. First, while traveling, I met lots of people who were traveling with very low budgets. They were either doing hitchhiking or staying with local people in a system called couchsurfing. Or they were working during the travel. They were working in the farms, they were working in the hostels, they were working in the hotels. They were producing some bracelets and jewelry and selling it. Or they were just making music in the streets to cover up their expenses. But if you are not happy with it, I will give myself as an example, because during the 4 years that I worked in Turkey, I saved all of my money. And I spent all this money instead of buying a house, getting into a mortgage, or buying a car. So, actually, one way or another, we all save up some money, but the real issue is how we prefer to spend it. So this again brings me to the real issue. Life is all about the choices you make. And personally, I believe that happiness is a choice. In every cross path you encounter, you make a choice. And in this one, I prefer to follow my dreams. I prefer to go after the happiness that I think will make me satisfied. You have only one life, and why are you spending it complaining all the time and doing the things that makes you unhappy? You have the right to choose, change it. You have the right to dream big, and have the courage to follow your dreams. So in 2012, as I mentioned, I started my world travel. During this travel, I visited 29 countries. The whole travel lasted 533 days, which is almost 17 and a half months. And I never returned back to Turkey. I started from Asia, India, and I visited Asia, Northern, Central, Southern America. And I returned back to Turkey last June, actually. So this is from one of the pictures. During this travel, I transformed completely. My whole life, my whole perception of the life changed radically. I realized the world we live in is extremely big, and there's many beautiful things to see. There's many differences that I have to appreciate. And for example, I will go with some places. This is from Bolivia. We wake up at 2 o'clock to see the sunrise. I realized the importance of the nature, importance of the time. I started following the sunrises, sunsets. When we were taking this picture, it was almost minus 15 degrees, but I didn't mind because this was one of the most beautiful things I ever seen. This is from Indonesia. Until this moment, I had never seen a volcano in my whole life before. There is one active volcano and the remaining ones are inactive. And again, this is 2 o'clock in the morning. We gathered up, we walked almost 2 hours just to see this view. This is from Colombia. This is the Tatacoa Desert. In the beginning, it was a tropical forest, but it dried up. And now this is the second biggest area, dried up area in the whole Colombia. And there's no electricity in this region, so every night they're organizing regular astronomy tours. There's a planetarium there, there's an experienced guide there, and you go around together with him, seeing and learning more about the stars. This is from Guatemala. This is Samut Chamtre. And after visiting all these beautiful areas, you have the chance to swim in these beautiful natural pools. This is from Indonesia. This is from the Flores Sea. And Indonesia is a country which is composed of almost 18,000 islands. And some of the islands are desert like this. So when we were in this island, we were the only ones who were stepping in. This is from Peru. This is desert basically, and there is a small lagoon, let me say, in the middle of the desert. And there's only around 100 people living in this desert. And it's famous with its wines. This is from Ecuador, Galapagos Islands. This rock is actually called the sleeping lion because the shape looks like a sleeping lion. And there's the beautiful, wildest nature underneath this rock. Because this is a volcanic area and you see all these sharks, all these sea turtles when you're swimming, all these colorful fishes around. And I learned to trust the people. I learned to accept the kindness of strangers. This is Lalita. I met her in India, in Jodhpur, in the Blue City. When we were walking around, I was taking pictures, and she realized me. I was taking the pictures in front of her street, and they invited me over. And imagine you are a girl, you are traveling by yourself, and you're in India. It was around like 5, 6 p.m., and they invited me over. I was a little bit unsecure about it. Then when I realized she was living with her family, she told me about her story. She was 24 years old, and she already had 3 children. And during the 4 hours I stayed with them, they could only speak a little English, but we communicated somehow. They cooked for me. We shared all the stories, even though we don't understand each other very much. And she gave me some bracelets for my ankles, and it was one of the most sincere experiences I had. So until now, all the things, don't talk to strangers, don't go to a stranger's house, were wrong for me. But the most important thing that I learned was about myself. During this whole travel, I realized all the things that I know before was wrong about myself. I discovered myself from the beginning, and I was completely naked mentally in this whole travel, and I was ready to accept everything. And as I mentioned, I returned back in June 2014, and right after the travel, I tried to move to Gaziantep. Currently, I'm working and living in Gaziantep. And you will probably ask why. After traveling the whole world, why I choose to move to Gaziantep. Because right now I realize what makes me happy is to help other people. So at the moment I'm working with the refugees, Syrian refugees in Gaziantep, with an international humanitarian organization for the last 7-8 months. And I realize the more I give to other people, the more I try to change even one people's life, it affects me a lot. And during the whole travel, as I mentioned, these whole different people touched me deeply, and now I'm trying to do something, trying to touch their hearts. So, right now I don't have a car, I don't have a house. I spent all the money that I saved during the whole travel, even the last penny. But I don't regret it all. Because the money you spend on traveling is the only money that makes you richer. And there's a famous saying that my father repeats all the time. He says that there comes a time a kid playing in a mat is happier than a king in his throne. Because happiness is not measured by what you own, but instead how you feel. Thank you.